series on sustainability in agriculture. I'm Annie Rutledge, a Senior Policy Advisor at AgForce, and I'll be the facilitator this afternoon. We're proud of our sector's very strong environmental, social and governance or ESG credentials. AgForce's Sustainability Committee has developed a set of ESG policy principles to guide Queensland's decision makers and thought leaders. So feel free to check those out on their AgForce website. I'm going to briefly hand over to Mark Collins now to give you a bit more background on AgForce and our Sustainability Committee.
Thanks, Annie. For those of you who are guests of AgForce here today, allow me to briefly introduce our organisation. AgForce is a peak organisation representing Queensland's cane, cattle, grain and sheep, wool and goat producers. AgForce provides advocacy to advance sustainable agribusiness, and we strive to ensure the long-term growth, viability and competitiveness and profitability of our sector. Over 6,500 farmers, individuals and businesses provide support to AgForce through membership. We thank all those members present tonight for their ongoing support for our mission. And also note CQU and their long-term involvement with AgForce as lessees of Belmont Research Station. So a shout out to you fellas, and it's a great partnership that we continue to work on and onwards and upwards. Sustainability is among the key policy areas for advocacy at AgForce. We have a Sustainability Committee, which I chair, and Annie is the Secretariat. Our committee members own and manage cattle, sheep, cane and grain properties, and we are also fortunate to have members from our corporate partners. Together we meet to discuss and coordinate efforts around sustainability policy for agriculture. We have identified that there's a keen need for continued education and informed dialogue, which is why we have convened these series. I'll pass back to Annie. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mark. So today we warmly welcome Dr. Diogo Costa. Dr. Costa grew up on his family's livestock property in Brazil and completed his undergraduate and master's studies at the University of Sao Paulo before doing his PhD at our very own University of Queensland, focused on the nutritional management of cattle within the context of the Northern Australian beef cattle industry. Dr. Costa now leads the water-based livestock methane mitigation project, operating within the Precision Livestock Management Team at CQU. We're also joined today by some of Dr. Costa's students. We warmly welcome you. AgForce is always pleased to engage with the next generation of agricultural thought leaders. Please take note that the views and expressions and opinions in this webinar are those of the speakers and are not necessarily the official view of AgForce. We're going to hold all the questions until the end, but feel free to pop them into the chat if you just can't wait, and I'll read them out when we get to that phase. So Dr. Costa, I'm just going to hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Annie, and thank you, AgForce, for having me here. Thumbs up that you can hear me well. It's always a pleasure. I'm going to start by thanking everyone at CQU that sort of help us get where we are with this project. We're towards the end of the project, so it's a very good time to talk because we have a lot to share. Our industry partners that participated of these and many other collaborators with sending their products to be tested. So it's good to now be able to talk and share a bit of what we've learned along the way. I'll start by asking, are there methane mitigation strategies for extensive grazing systems? And I'll answer as we go. The name of the project is Exploring Methane Inhibitors Supplemented Through Water. So that tells it all, right? What are we doing? We are adding compounds into the water supply of grazing animals with the idea of reducing enteric methane. So number one is what, right? But why are we doing it? Well, I feel that the number one, why are we putting in the water instead of just feeding in front of them? Grazing is a completely different ball game when compared to a feedlot scenario or an intensive dairy production system that you're controlling pretty much everything that's going in front of the animal, right? You're preparing the TMR, you're putting in front of the animal, you can add feed additives. However, animals that are grazing in extensive systems in Australia, they go and find what they want to eat. But they all come to water. That's why we sort of, okay, here's a potential strategy for grazing systems, right? We can use water. And the second point of why is because by doing that, by helping reduce methane, we can be part of a solution to climate change. I absolutely don't believe cattle are the cause of global warming. I'm not saying that if you don't manage right your pastures, control stock rates, you can't do bad things to the environment. But we can do wonderful things to the environment. A sustainable production with good grazing management and you're already preserving, and by doing things that we can reduce a gas that is strong and traps heat in the atmosphere, we we actually create global cooling, right? So we're giving the opportunity to other industries do their bit as well towards a better world to everyone. It's no secret that MLA has made a commitment, right? So we're hoping to help our livestock industry, our red meat industry, become carbon neutral by 2030 and change how customers, when I say customers, the city folks, right? The ones that have no idea about anything at all and like to blame on us in the countryside, but perhaps change how they perceive us as an industry, right? It's a bit of a I think in Australia you use the term the whip or the carrot, right? Like we don't know as the producers, my father back in Brazil don't know what's gonna happen. Are we gonna be punished for this or are we gonna get incentive? I know that is it gonna change ways to operate, the license to operate, or are we creating new markets for a low emission beef? There's a sum of those things. I don't know the answer. I just know that I felt that we had to do something for our industry to be part of that solution for global warming. I'll start by saying as well that we did not want to reinvent the wheel. There was already a lot of work done in feed additives, right? So we didn't want to say, hey, let's test new things in via water. There was already a lot done by researchers over the many years. So what I'm calling here technology A is the information of feed additives. And what I'm calling technology B is water medication, so water injection technology, which has been, especially in Australia, has evolved so much over the years, started back in the 70s and 80s. Technology has changed completely since then, and we have GIT AgTech with us representing our industry partner here. So we had those two things already in place, right? A lot of information about feed additives and a well-developed and well-established technology to deploy nutrients in the water, mainly nitrogen and phosphorus, so important in Australia, right? Can we put feed additives in the water as well? We decided to tackle this over 3 steps. We call them phases. So phase one, we had a look pretty deep into the science of what was happening there in the lab. What I'm calling here phase 2, I put an arrow there, is in a highly controlled environment with animals. So in vivo, we had pen trials to look at the effects on palatability, on growth performance. And phase 3 is let's go to the real world. We went to Belmont Station on a grazing scenario to simulate what's happening out there in Northern Australia in grazing systems. So the lab, we used a fake, artificial environment, right? We were just trying to understand and try to find out what we could expect from those compounds in water. And I have there two, the U doser, that's the name of DIT's system. So the doser has a tank where their nutrients or any compound added there would be in high concentration versus the water trough once you deliver that to the cattle in a much lower concentration, right? So we try to simulate both scenarios as well. In the lab, we use the technique called FTIR, so Fourier transform infrared. What it does, it sort of uses light to look at the signature of a compound. I'll just explain the treatments we had. Like I said, there was a lot done with feed additives, so we just went through the literature and flagged 34 different compounds that could be used and we considered everything, like from plant secondary compounds, the tannins, saponins, essential oils, the rumen inhibitors, 3-NOP, bromoform. We were completely agnostic about what we were going to use. We wanted to see everything that we could put our hands on. And we were lucky that we actually we brought things from all over the world. We had commercial supplements coming from Europe, coming from South America, from the US and Australia. So we were really, really wide and went far with that. And then our treatments, we simulated 24 and 48 hours, just thinking of that water trough, how long the water would be there before present and exposed before the animal came and consumed the water, right? And it was replenished. So we had those two time points. We also were worried about the temperature, right? It's different when you test something in the lab at room temperature, and then you go to the Barclay tablelands and it's cold during the day and frigging hot that's cold during the night, frigging hot during the day. So it's important to see those changes as well in temperature. So we had 4 degrees, right? Being cold, 25 and 45, and different pHs. You might know already, I don't know, but water is not the same depending where you are. You have water with different pHs. Our industry's partners can tell us much more about it because they have been seeing water everywhere in Australia. What the technique does, and I'm gonna show you 2 examples of went wrong, as in compounds that failed in the solubility and stability trial. The equipment provides a signature. So depending on the molecules of the compound, the light goes through, and it's like literally like an ID. If you put your thumbs there and you get that signature. The example on top that I said there appeared to fall out of solution is simply demonstrating that over time, the compound is decanting. It's going to the bottom, so it's not stable, right? It may be soluble, but it doesn't stay there in solution. Or the example below where the signature was modified. So something is reacting. If it's reacting with the urea phosphate supplement of with DIT supplement, or if it's reacting with itself in time, whatever it is changing the signature. So it's what you put there in water is not what you find there over time. So those failed and didn't even go to the next stage of the trials in phase 1, where we took them and put them in a artificial rumen, I'll call that. So those bottles there, they stay in a bath at 39 degrees, simulating the rumen temperature. We put rumen fluid, a buffer, and the substrate, and then we look at gas production, the profile of that gas, what percentage of that is methane, and most importantly, we look at effects on degradability, because there's no point in reducing methane if it's affecting how the animal can utilize the feed that's there, right? So we had a ranking of those in vitro, and we came up with winners in that. So we had 2 commercial compounds there, and I'm gonna show some of the data that we have in vivo as well. And we had choline chloride, which is not a commercial product out there, but we explored it further in the lab. For those of you that are curious, we already published 2 papers. They have very similar names, but the difference of the 2 work is, one, we were looking at a screening of those methane reducing compounds via water alone. And the via water alone is the one on top on the right, which is, it's actually, I'm putting it there, but it's literally just going over proofreading. So it will be available online, free for access in the next day or so. And the one on the bottom left, already published, where we looked at those compounds in combination with DIT's supplement. And that's very important, right? Because uh, we believe, or I believe, that the producers that are more likely to adopt strategies like this are the ones that are already using the technology, right? Are already feeding their animals, so they see benefits. Oh, okay, I know the benefits of using urea, of using phosphorus in Australia, so that nitrogen during the dry season. Can I add something else? The first pen trial, we looked at the first one there in the ranking, which is a bromoform-based compound. We had here a C Corp, Central Queensland Innovation Research Precinct in Rocky. Everyone is welcome to come for a look and visit our facilities here. The photo on top is of DIT's U dosers. So we have the dosing system, right? So water injection. Um, and we literally had these 4 dosers sending water injected everywhere in the shed. So we had 28 animals randomly allocated in a factorial design, where we tested water. So it was water injected to water plus this anti-methanogenic compound, a bromoform-based compound, the urea supplement, it's called U-Pro Orange, and the 2 together, urea plus the anti-methanogenic compound. What we looked at, water intake, which is pretty important, right? Is it affecting palatability, or are they consuming water just fine with no issues? Feed intake, is it affecting feed intake? Digestibility. So I have myself over there with the shovel collecting feces. That's how we do it. You measure what goes in, what comes out, and you see how efficient they were to digest the feed. Rumen microbiome. We collected rumen fluid at the end to see if there are effects on the methanogenic populations. and methane emissions using the SF6 technique, which is, I have Ryan there, one of our students, changing the canister. So the steers were literally wearing backpacks to collect the gas emitted through 24-hour period. For me, this is probably the most important of the results, which is not about methane. We simulated a dry season forage, so we had a moderate quality grass. It was Rhodes grass, about 6% crude protein, 50% digestibility. And in Australia, it can be much below that, right? Like you can have spear grass, winter grass with 4. But our grass in that condition was something a good representation of what can happen in Northern Australia. This graph is showing cumulative weight change. So I put the initial live weight of the animals, I called that 0. So over the days of the experiment, if an animal loses weight, so it goes down. If it puts on weight, it goes up. It's fairly common for animals during the dry season in Australia to lose weight. And that's exactly what happened to the blue and gray line. Irrespective of having the methane reducing additive or not, they lost weight, right? So it did nothing to growth performance. What's keeping the animals up and gaining a little bit of weight over time is nitrogen, right? That so important nutrient that we all know about it. So the two treatments that had the nitrogen supplement were able to maintain or gain moderate weights throughout the experiment. Since today's talk is about methane, let's look at the data on methane. Irrespective of having the urea together or not, the additive did affect methane emissions. And it's known to be an inhibitor that blocks methanogenic microbes. And we were able to see about 28% decrease in total emissions, so in grams per day. If you look, so the second, I put the squares there. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse there. So this is grams per day methane, so it's significant. 0.01, 0.05 for those that like statistics is what we consider significant at 95% confidence interval, and a trend to reduce as well methane per kilogram of live weight. Experiment 2, we looked at the other commercial compound there, which is a blend of essential oils, is a commercially available, so it's already provided in Australia, and our industry partner has that already deployed in the field. We looked at a blend of essential oils called Agolin. This time, instead of using the individual paints, we used group paints, and we had smart feeders to control their intake of water and intake of feed. Those are the treatments we had in this particular experiment. We didn't test water alone, so it was water plus the supplement for all treatments, and we tested 2 doses of Agolin over 10 weeks. Again, we use the dosers. So the photo on the left there, injection technology sending water to us, and Kawane is the girl on top there, putting the water according to treatment. So those smart feeders, they have a gate that it reads the RFID of the animal, so the animal can either access a feeder or not depending on allocation, right? So all the animals were in the same area, and they had access to hay. So those feeders, this is a bit of a diagram showing the area. Here they had Rhodes grass hay. This time we used a bit better quality hay, 10% crude protein, and they could walk between these two. Here they had the water treatment, and outside they could access a green feed unit. I think my next slide, there we go. The green feed unit is that equipment on the left there, where the animals are attracted by a pellet. So the machine reads the RFID, dispenses a pellet. When they come to consume it, there are fans that suck the air and tell you the profile of the gas, what proportion is methane, hydrogen, CO2. So we looked at water and feed intake using the smart feeders. This time, because they were in group, we used INDF, so indigestible NDF, as a marker to look at feed digestibility. We measured live weight gain again. We do it every week. I didn't mention in the previous trial, but every week we measure live weight gain. Collected rumen fluid, that's Olivia there collecting through the esophagus for rumen microbiome analysis, and we measure methane with the two techniques. This work is submitted to the Journal of Animal Science in the USA. It has been accepted. It's just pending revisions. So I don't put it didn't put it here, but you can expect it that it will be available in the near future as well. I just wanted to focus on something very interesting. So this graph is showing methane emissions per day. Different to the previous compound that was a rumen inhibitor. This second additive is a rumen modulator. So what it does, it's with time it changes the microbiome, and the literature suggests that it takes, for agolin, the one we used, that it takes 3 to 4 weeks to have the rumen modulated and start seeing the decreases in methane. And that's exactly what happened. Here you got the control treatment, and we had 2 doses of agolin. And interesting enough, the dose that's recommended for solids, so we had that dose and a lower dose. The dose that is recommended for solids did not work that well, and that is expected. With additives affecting methane, it's about dose. It's not like, oh, you're going to increase, and you're going to have more reduction. No, it's about finding that dose that you can tweak the microbial population and have the effects you're expecting. As suggested by the literature, we started seeing that decrease at around 4 weeks, and it continued over the whole trial. So this is as I said, submitted to Journal of Animal Science and should be available in the near future. Another nice thing of this is I put here on the left that we did an analysis of how effective the injection technology was. I was lucky to have Eli Romanzini. Dr. Romanzini is based in Rockhampton and he helped us throughout the project. And he was there every day and every weekend, didn't want to have take days off. And we're always there checking how accurate the injection technology worked. As you can see, it was pretty effective, right? Like more than 90% of the injections occurred with no dramas. So again, that slide where I had said that we had 3 phases: lab, high controlled environment, the 2 pen trials, and then we were showing one at Belmont Station, owned by AgForce, and where we run a lot of our trials here in partnership. So we used 44 bulls. So the operation there has a stud cattle from Jeff Maynard. We use his winner bulls, 44 bulls in a completely randomized design. What we decided to do is, instead of having a lot of paddocks in a few animals in each paddock, we had all the animals grazing the same area, and we used an auto drafter to allocate them to the different treatments. Not sure if the video will work. So I fast forward and it reads the RFID. They either go left where they had the agolin added to the supplement, or they go right, or they go straight and goes straight to control treatment where it was just UPRO. It's important to say that we had this way that it's either left or go straight, because we thought, well, if the technology, and now I'm talking about the auto drafter, fails, at least we know that the animals are not getting the supplement, right? The additive. Apologize. So, and that proved to be very smart, because we ended up finding out some problems with our technology, now CQ Uni, because we own the drafter. Um, so some of the results, and I'll start with some not as nice results. This is just showing the water consumption over time and rainfall events. This graph here where you have the green arrows is when we started the experiment. Here we're just doing adaptations. Um, I always heard that with the surface water can be a problem for water injection technology. And we literally saw that, yes, it is a problem. There's no denying there. Whenever it rained, the animals didn't go to the trough to consume water. I think this is something, I guess, it's good to be aware, right? Because as more and more producers decide to deploy the technology, they know the limitations, right? Perhaps those additives specifically might be more targeted to drier seasons, or they can combine more than one strategy in their operation. But yes, it is a fact that it rains, cattle are less prone to go to water. I'm sure that depending on the environment, if there's more or less surface water, that will be different. This is how it was at Belmont Station in our trial conditions. In this experiment, we did not see, oh, and I should have said, no, for the essential oil, we did not see effects on performance. Um, it is it is something I know them as a son of a cattle producer, we all want to see an effect on performance, on productivity, because there's a greater appeal to adopt a technology if we know, oh, cattle are gaining more. In our conditions, again, we did not see that. We did have an issue, as I said, with our technology, the auto drafter. We were lucky enough that we had cameras, and one of the students, I'm not sure if he's here, William, he watched more than 2,000 videos of the auto drafter just to be sure of which animals got the right treatments. And we found out that as the day got hotter, during the peak hours of the day, the antenna didn't work that well. So that meant that animals that were supposed to go to Agoling and get the additive, they went straight and drank control water. So what we decided to do in our analysis was we only used animals that had been drafted successfully more than 70% of the time. We randomly randomly chose 70% as a number that we felt would be good, and looked at the results. Very similar to our previous work done in the pains, the reduction in methane was about 15%. However, because of the lower number, we ended up not getting a significant effect here. This is a trend. I'll let it up to you guys to decide. I think it's very promising that we saw that reduction similar to what we saw in the pain condition in a controlled condition, despite all the issues of having rain and affecting water intake. That actually made me think more about what type of additive is more suitable for grazing conditions. Perhaps instead of an inhibitor, something that modulates the rumen environment that doesn't have to be in every mouthful might be something more appropriate. Just something out there for you guys to think about it. No effects on methane per live weight in this trial. Just that's it. I wanted to share. I sort of my take home message is, well, water injection technology. I used that in a field day that we went in Richmond, and I liked it. Like, it's not a silver bullet, right? Like, but it's a good damn good bullet. Like, it is certainly a strategy that we need to consider and work more and more, particularly for extensive grazing systems. It's important to recognize these limitations, right? And stay updated on future developments, because there's certainly a lot of heat on this, and a lot of more work being done. Thank you. Could I stop sharing?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Diogo. That's been really interesting. I was distracted there taking notes myself, actually, so pardon me for that moment. That's going to bring us to question time. Mark, did you want to kick us off with some questions?
Oh, yep. Thanks, Annie. Yeah, thanks, Diogo. Overcoming the issue of surface water is a big one, but is fencing it out at all possible? I guess it depends on our landscape and whatever else. That would add to the costs of this project, but that's something worth looking at, I feel.
Yeah, well, we did with electric fences. So we were trying to, in this condition, because we were just at Belmont, we were trying, but I don't know if it's just the small puddles that form during the morning, or if it's the moisture on the grass, because as the animal is grazing, there is a lot of, when we went there in the morning, just walking we used to collect sword height measurements every week to manage the pasture. And as you walk, you get all wet, right? So I I honestly don't know. I do know that in Australia you do have a lot of times that we don't have rain, so it's it's certainly more applied in less. There would be less limitations, but I guess I don't know if our industry partners would like to say something. They have probably more experience than me with what they have been seeing out there in other areas. In these conditions that we were here, it became an issue. It was an area where we had a lot of puddles being formed every time it rained. So, so it might be different to other types of soils and other conditions for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
could I just add there for you? Hi, Viv McCollum here from DIT AgTech, and yeah, I think it's a really important thing to note. But I suppose the beauty of the system is that we can actually measure when they're not drinking. So in effect, if they're not drinking, we know that they're not getting whatever supplements. So, but from what I've seen in, I watch it during the wet season on a number of different doses in the north, and absolutely you can see they're tracking along, drinking what you think they should be drinking. Then they'll get maybe a really big lot of rain, and they might go off that trough for a week or 2 weeks, but you see them come back on really, really quickly. And because we can see what the daily water consumption is, we know when they're not drinking and when they are drinking. So I think that's, that's a tool, that's a positive from the fact that never before have we had that line of sight for what they're actually consuming in a extensive grazing system. But yeah, and I think, Diogo, your point around, maybe the modulators are a better fit is something that we need to consider as well. But again, I think the key point is we can be measuring when they are drinking and when they're not drinking.
Yeah, that's very good.
Actually, if I might ask a question just related to that was, so I liked the way that you showed a balanced picture of how, things don't always go to plan because that's like the real world. And it does all feed into better understanding of, how you can potentially improve the strategies that you're applying. So I really liked that. Just regarding water, did you notice that there were some cases where the cattle seem more reluctant to drink the water based on the additives, or maybe even potentially the opposite, increased desire to drink the water?
Yeah, we published a paper, but it was a bit of a side project to these, where after we finished the trial, it was a opportunistic paper. We finished the trial, and then we had the smart feeders, all the animals there. We put the water in other feeders just so that they would not be used to going to the same feeder, so it would be new to all of them.
Yeah.
We actually changed completely the side of the shed, so they would have to go for water on the other side. And we put water with the supplement, water alone, just water, and water, the supplement. And Eli can tell me if I'm wrong because he's the first author on that paper. And we did not see differences, not preferences. Like, we were able to monitor their intake. I do wonder if naive cattle that has never been exposed to supplemented water would behave the same. So this paper is on drinking behavior. I feel that maybe you're right that they could potentially drink less or be more reluctant to drink, but if you adopt them, and the company, well, DIT certainly has strategies there to adopt the animals to the supplemented water, right? Having urea is important, that adaptation. Once the animals are adopted, they will drink it. That's that I know for sure.
Okay.
I don't know if maybe Viv and Eli have something, because I'm talking about, we fed 28 plus 23 animals in the second trim, and then 44. They're feeding more than one or two, right, Viv? I don't know how many, but thousands. So they would know better than me.
Just continuing to think about water, I guess I'm thinking back to more experience with herbicide mixes and how mixes can go wrong depending on their combination, and it can affect their solubility and so on. Also in that space, the hardness of water and the quality of the water matters. Did you have any experience around that with these supplements?
No, I believe there are cases where there would need to be, I guess, like the hardness of the water would be an issue. In our experience here with our water, we have been collecting water samples throughout all the the experiments and analyze the presence of the additives in the water. After time, we looked at solubility, instability, but we didn't have a hard water here with us. I think that maybe potentially the high calcium would be an issue, but I cannot tell you.
Yeah.
Annie, it's a really, really, really good question. And it's something that we consider all the time with any formulations that we make. We undergo all of our product testing, what we call stress test it, and we test it for solubility and stability against a big range of different water qualities, hard water, soft water. But that work is continuing all the time, and we will be doing a lot more work on the effects of water health on beef cattle production in general, because it is something we need to keep in mind. And yes, I that's why I picked it up, because I've also worked in that agronomic situation where you do have solubility and stability issues with some herbicides. So that's something that's very much on our radar, and we're constantly water testing. We're constantly looking at all our products in different scenarios. And just to circle back on the water consumption behaviour, the research that we've done to date has shown, particularly with this agalin, that there was no palatability preference for or against drinking it. It was more behavioural related.
Okay, no, that's really good background to have there. Thanks, Vivian. I mean, I've obviously got plenty of questions, but I might just check back in with Mark if he had anything.
No, thank you, Annie. I'm all good, thank you.
All right, so I'll keep going ahead selfishly then. So just considering the cost of methane inhibitors, were there any other silver linings, like not just methane, but things like cattle health, cattle weight gain, I guess just anything else that you might not have envisaged, but was maybe a pleasant surprise during the trial?
Yeah, no, we certainly considered that. When that first lab trial that we had 34 different compounds, some that I really wanted to include there were ionophores, just use monenzine, right? It's widely known for its benefits, changing feed efficiency, having increasing nutrient use and all the benefits of using some of those additives. But monenzine, for example, failed, as in it was soluble, but not for long. Eventually, you could actually literally see by eye the it would solve, and then suddenly you start seeing some crystals that it started decanting. So,
because that would kind of be the holy grail in a way, wouldn't it be? If you can create something that has dual benefits. Mark and I have talked about this a lot for different things, not just this space, but where you're hoping to achieve something for the climate, because as you pointed out, Diego, you're really doing that more or less for other people. So, what are the pluses for the production system, for the farming enterprise? Where are the wins there? That would be really a bit of a silver grail if you could chase something that both reduces methane, even if it's not as much as we might dream of, but and has other benefits as well.
No, I totally agree, and that's something that we were like really hopeful to. We did not see in our trial conditions, so that's research, right? Like I have to report on what we saw. We're hoping for it. If it does have effects on gut health, at this stage, I don't know. We did, as I said in the material maths, we collected rumen fluid, and we're actually, the samples are in China. We should get the results soon. So there might be other potential benefit there that we don't know at this stage, but nothing that we could measure, as in the productivity was the same across treatments. The only thing that was clearly obvious was the increment in productivity when you add nitrogen to a low quality forage, right? Which was expected. But I guess in this case was good because was expected from what has been done with solids, with urea fed via molasses, there's not a lot of literature available in water supplementation. But we're hoping to change that a bit because there's a great potential. I think producers were very reluctant to use water injection technology because at the start of the technology 80s, the technology was different, was not what they have nowadays, right? So it's no secret that there were cattle deaths. Urea is toxic if in high amounts, but we're talking about a technology that was used how many decades ago? Now it's a completely different. My cell phone nowadays is light years better than the computer that I had in the 90s. And I'm talking about something that started in the 80s. Um, they have sensors that can detect high salinity. So there's sensors, if there's too much urea going, it triggers and stops injection to I guess give more confidence to producers that they can use without having issues of or concerns with urea toxicity being the number one concern.
Well, thanks, Diego. Well, that's been, really interesting. And I think the work you've done, it's always about answering questions, and it can go in so many different ways, but as long as it's well done, which your work is, it's always teaching us something. So thank you and good work to the team. That brings this webinar to a close, unless there's anybody else who'd like to say anything now. But again, we're just very grateful to be able to partner with you in this kind of research. It's great to hear about our research farm Belmont in a webinar. We should probably hear a bit more about that on a regular basis. So we'll stay in touch. All right. So thanks all for your participation. We're just happy to have had your engagement with us today, and just goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.